motorbikes zipping past the small lanes, you do see a clear majority of orange color.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Impulso Podcast. I think you haven't heard my voice in a while because we've been having a very busy month, right, Jangan?
Sabrina has been away on a very nice trip to Taiwan while everybody else is working their ass off.
Yeah, Sabrina has been very relaxed for the past 2 weeks, but turns out no one was, only me.
So you also see a face here, Weihan. When were we last on the podcast? Like a year ago?
I think at least a year ago.
Okay, so when she's not on a podcast, which is like 99.99% of the time, she powers most of the reports from Momentum Works that you see out there.
And insights. So that's why we've dragged her into the podcast today to share a little bit.
But how's Taiwan?
So cold, oh my gosh. Wow, I was so unprepared for the weather. I don't know why, I never thought
How cold
that.
was it?
Okay,
like 8 degrees?
When I was in Taipei, everywhere else was fine, but Taipei was raining.
Okay.
So it was like
8
10
degrees?
to 14 degrees.
That's not cold.
It's so cold. So when we are going to China next week, right, I'm going to plan for the weather.
So when she was in Taiwan, some of us were actually in Hangzhou, and it was one day in the morning. I was in a hotel, and I had the window open, and I was looking outside. I said, okay, there's something white coming down from the sky.
Did it snow?
Yeah, for about, I don't know, half an hour. I mean, it was not heavy, but that day was 0 degrees. We're going to China next week, yeah.
Yes, so it will be cold and I will be prepared. I'm very excited to go to China again and order my Meituan. It's the highlight of my trip. So I'm going to fly in with, right, I already told her, I was like, when we land, because we are landing at night in Shanghai, I was like, we need to order Meituan to the hotel room. It's like first order of business when I go to China.
So, and people say that they order food delivery, they order like a quick commerce because it's fast. But sometimes when you go down, and I mean, you ordered something, it gets delivered in half an hour?
Half an hour, yeah.
And you go down and the commerce is everywhere and you sort of buy something and you can take it back to the room in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, but like if I'm already in the room and like I'm clean, I don't want to leave the room.
Cold.
That's when delivery is good. Yeah, and it's cold. So if you leave the room, the layers you need to put on, especially at night, it like doesn't make sense, right?
That would never happen in Southeast Asia. I guess it's a lot faster to just go out and get things yourself. Because I think the delivery here takes like what? At least in Singapore, 40 minutes minimum, and then it's very expensive.
Okay, yeah, I was like, in Singapore, I'll be willing to wait because if I go out, I will sweat. But the delivery fee is
So either way, I mean, she's just lazy.
Yeah, no. I'm just like, if I'm clean, I don't want to leave the house. Because then I need to come back and like shower again. But then the delivery fee in Singapore is like $9.
Did you use any delivery in Taiwan?
I actually didn't order food delivery when I was in Taiwan. So Taiwan, the two main players are Uber Eats and
Foodpanda,
right?
Yeah.
So I had both apps. I use Uber a lot, by the way, because my friend literally told me like, don't trust the buses in Taiwan. So I took Uber a lot, but I didn't order delivery. I don't know why. I don't think it was very cheap, or like you said, on the way back, I will stop by the convenience store.
Yeah, and you always have a store.
Yeah, there's like, on my way back, I would pass by at least like 3 or 4, either like 7-Eleven or Family Marts.
Are people ordering food delivery often in Taiwan then?
I saw some riders. I saw Foodpanda more. But I think it's biasness because Foodpanda is so bright and it's pink, but Uber is black. So maybe I don't notice the difference between like the Uber Eats riders and like normal motorcyclists.
No, I think we did some research. I think Foodpanda probably has a bit higher market share compared to Uber Eats in Taiwan. Yeah. But Uber is, I mean, we used to have Uber in Southeast Asia.
Yes.
Before they merged with Grab in 2018. And for me, I pass by Hong Kong quite a lot. And every time you're in Hong Kong, it's sort of...
Is it Uber as well?
Yeah, you can use Uber.
You don't use Kita? That's Meituan's app, by the way.
That's for delivery, but we travel around. And so to this day, lots of taxis. I mean, in Hong Kong, it's very easy to hail a taxi from the street. But lots of taxis still only take cash.
Oh.
Yeah.
I did not take taxis when I was in Taiwan because my friends got scammed by the taxi driver.
Oh, what?
I think they overcharged them or something.
Okay.
So we went with Uber lah. Uber is, I think that's the thing about mobility, right? When you're in a foreign country and you don't want to be scammed by taxi drivers, you use an app because you already know beforehand how much you're going to pay. And whether or not there's a reasonable amount for you.
I think same goes for what we see here in Southeast Asia, right? Like usually we just have one main mobility app that we use, and I think for us a lot of time it is Grab. So what we do is that we will use Grab mainly for mobility, but then sometimes like, hey, they also offer food delivery, so it's kind of like a convenience to have it both in the same app as compared to having to download something that is different.
I also think about that. I mean, you don't have to, download a different app, do the registration, and sort of link your card. That's actually quite a bit of effort. I mean, it's not a lot, but people are lazy.
People are getting lazier. But I guess that's the advantage that Grab has, right? Because Grab is very regional. So anyone in Southeast Asia that travels to other Southeast Asian countries, you would use Grab. You wouldn't really think of other apps. And then essentially when you want food delivery as well, since you already have the Grab app, you might as well use Grab. Because okay, so we launched the 5th edition of our food delivery platform report recently. Links will be in the show notes below. And obviously it showed that Grab is the biggest player in terms of food delivery.
It has been the biggest for a while, right?
Yeah, and I think it's because of what we discussed, right? Because essentially it's a mobility app. Most people use it when they travel around Southeast Asia, of course, and then you might as well just order food delivery as well.
But not because of that. I mean, so most of the users probably don't travel out of their country. I think most of the users will probably be people who are staying in the country. Yeah.
So then why is Grab the top in food delivery?
Because they have executed over so many years.
Yeah, they have the operational fleet and all, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that Shopee Food is the 3rd player regionally. Obviously, we're from Singapore, right? So obviously, if we don't do research about this and all, I wouldn't even know that Shopee Food is a thing. And it's weird because we look at C's results quite frequently.
Yeah,
and
it just came out
a
couple of days ago, and the share price rose like more than 10%, 12% over 2 days. So apparently, I mean, investors were happy about their results. It's already quadrupled from their low. So if you bought some shares at $30, now you are like rich.
Yeah, I was like, damn, should have bought some.
That's why all the people next door in the C Group office are kind of happy nowadays.
Yeah, but Shopee Food is something that they don't really talk about, which is interesting because it's growing quite rapidly, right?
Yeah, it's major, right?
Yeah, they are 3rd in the region, and they are. Okay, so looking at like maybe a more specific market in Vietnam, specifically, they are almost on par with Grab, which is the market leader. So it's kind of like a duopoly there, right?
They started in Vietnam quite early, right? I mean, they bought this company called Foodie back in 2016 as a food review site, and Foodie later launched food delivery service. So they have always been a major player in Vietnam. But of course, from outside the region, people don't pay much attention to food delivery in Vietnam because I think it's still the smallest market in Southeast Asia, right? Even though it's growing very fast.
Yeah, it's one of the smallest market, but I think in Vietnam's case, right, even when we're on the ground, we also see some very interesting trends. Is that when we were in Ho Chi Minh City last year, I think even though we knew that Grab and Vietnam were on a duopoly system in Vietnam, right, we feel that we only see more Grab drivers and other players in Ho Chi Minh City. But when we were asking around, we've noticed that actually Shopee Food has a much larger presence in the north, like in places like Hanoi, Haiphong. I'm just wondering, Sabrina, since you're such a frequent traveler to Vietnam, do you actually see this since you like Hanoi so much?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I was like, I was in Hanoi before we went to Ho Chi Minh City. I think last year as well. I do think I saw a lot more Shopee Food riders when we were in Hanoi than compared to Ho Chi Minh City. But in Ho Chi Minh City, we really don't see a lot. So we were there in August. I see a lot more Shopee Food in Hanoi, which is the northern part, right? But when we were in Ho Chi Minh City, I don't think I saw a lot of Shopee Food. What's the yellow color? I recognize them by their the color of their bags.
B Group, yeah.
B Group is kind of new as well, right?
They have been around for a while, but I think they're backed by one of the telcos, so they've been around for a while and they had some ambitions. But I think in terms of food delivery, they're relatively small. So about Shopee Food specifically, I also had that experience, right? I mean, I think the second or third time we did the annual report on food delivery platforms, we actually did a survey in Ho Chi Minh City about people's preference, and it was clearly majority towards Grab. But then when you look at the data coming from other sources, it's a bit different. So then we dug a little bit deeper. I mean, a couple of things. I mean, first, for whatever reason, Grab is still a little bit more premium in Southeast Asia, and some people say that it's because of deliberate design, but we tend to believe in the narrative that it's because for whatever reason they targeted everyone, and then when they became a little bit more cautious about incentives, the good users stayed.
Okay.
But in Vietnam, I remember there was once, I go to Hanoi a lot, about a year and a half ago, and I was walking around a random neighborhood. It's not even in like any of the tourist recommendation stuff. Yeah, I mean, just walked, and then there was a small lake, and in front of the lake there was a few cafes. I mean, like there are cafes everywhere in Vietnam. So we just sat there for like half a day, and then you see all the motorbikes zipping past the small lanes. You do see a clear majority of orange color. I mean, the Shopee Food in that neighborhood at least. So yeah, that backs the narrative, right? You don't see that much in the commercial areas in Ho Chi Minh City, but you do see that in a lot of neighborhoods in the north.
I guess it's also because of kind of I guess this impacts their basket size and all as well, right? So Shopee Food
is correlated for sure.
Probably has a much smaller basket size. It's interesting. Maybe we should try Shopee Food when we are in Vietnam.
There's also another market, right? Indonesia. So our estimate is what? Shopee Food is like 18%?
I think about more than 5% in the past year. Yeah, so I think for Indonesia, it's a very interesting case. So tying back with what we mentioned about Vietnam just now, right? So Gojek exited last year, so that leaves
exited Vietnam.
Last year, yes. So that leaves Indonesia as their only market left. So a lot has been happening in Indonesia in the past year. We heard that from our friends that there were a lot of sort of incentive or like mini price wars that are going on, such that everyone is trying to offer low cost. And then with that, you see that I think uptake has grown, because ultimately what the food delivery currently is not everyone can afford it on the usual basis. So by lowering the prices, right, more people are more receptive to, oh, let me just try it. And I think for Shopee Food, that's precisely the audience that they are trying to go. So I think with that in mind, they have managed to capture quite a decent portion of new users, which explains why they've grown so much.
I think naturally e-commerce appeals to more people compared to ride-hailing and food delivery, right? So, I mean, even if you are poor, you can still go and buy things on e-commerce because it offers...
there are things you still have to buy.
Yeah, and it offers value for money for lots of items. So I think Shopee naturally has a wide range of users. And food delivery is something that, I mean, I think nowadays they don't talk about it alone. It's basically part of Shopee, right? So, and people go to Shopee to order food.
Is it a separate app or is it within the Shopee app itself?
In most markets, it's within the Shopee app. So, I mean, of course, for them, they probably need to discuss whether they should do a separate app because, I mean, think about e-commerce and food delivery on the same app. Think about experience.
It can get very messy, but I guess if we're talking about ease of having to download the app, then having it on the same app makes it easier, a lot easier, right?
So another thing about Indonesia is, I think similar to what you observed in Vietnam. I think when our previous report was launched in 2024, we were saying that, okay, Shopee Food is the third player in Indonesia. Then I had like so many people tell me, no way, I'm in my office right in the center of Jakarta, where I don't see any Shopee rider. So last year I brought a few friends to the city of Bandung, which is about, I think, an hour away by high-speed rail from Jakarta. And once you're at Bandung, you see like Shopee Food riders everywhere. So clearly they are targeting a different cohort of consumers, at least for their sort of current size.
I think that's interesting, right? Because when we were preparing for this report also, a lot of the people that we speak to, they don't see how big Shopee Food is. I think because maybe if you're not in the city, like for us, we don't even have Shopee Food in Singapore. I guess we're not their target audience.
But what's the point of doing that in Singapore? I mean, if I were Shopee, I would launch ride-hailing in Singapore, not food delivery.
Really?
It's too much effort. Ride-hailing is so profitable.
That
is so profitable. And I was looking at the data published by authorities, and 90% of the rides in Singapore are now hailed through app. Like only very few people are still going out and flagging a cab.
That's true.
Like what Dennis is doing now, flagging a taxi.
Although sometimes it's a lot cheaper to flag a taxi still. But the convenience-wise, you won't even think of it anymore. Oh my god, really? I think these ride-hailing and mobility food delivery apps ruin our perception of convenience. So it's interesting. Maybe we should try Shopee Food when we are in Vietnam. So because we'll be going to Vietnam end of March.
End of March.
So for you guys that are interested, just briefly, the reason why we're going to Ho Chi Minh City is because we're doing an immersion endorsed by the Department of Industry and Trade in Vietnam, where we'll be visiting a couple of e-commerce players as well as retailers.
Yeah, large retailers.
So if you guys are interested, more details will be in the show notes below, so you can just check it out. Right? But not just Shopee or Shopee Food, right? Another interesting thing that we've seen also is TikTok. Not really entering the food delivery scene. They haven't gone there yet, but they have kind of entered local services.
What is local services?
Yeah, what is local services?
I think you can, in layman terms, you can think of local services as a voucher buying, offering that you can actually directly buy.
Right?
on TikTok itself. So I think TikTok now, the fact that they already have TikTok Shop, so there is sort of like the capabilities inbuilt in the app. So what they're trying to do is that, okay, so they work with a couple of, let's say, coffee chains, and then they're saying that, hey, you can use my platform
as a marketing channel,
as a marketing channel,
Yeah.
and from there they offer like, let's say, how many % off, maybe 1-for-1 vouchers, and then consumers will be like, hey, this looks like a good deal, let me buy it, and then I'll go to the offline store
To redeem.
it.
Okay.
So that's the idea of local services. But I think it's also kind of similar to what Grab has been trying to do with their Dine Now
Now,
service.
yeah.
So I think this might encroach in a sense into Grab's territory
Yeah.
and somehow encroach into maybe food delivery in the future as well.
Did you notice that when you are in China, sometimes they'll just come to you saying that, hey, buy this voucher on Dianping or Meituan,
Yes.
it gives you a discount.
Yeah,
And
they
some-
always ask you to order through an app instead of directly at the restaurant itself.
Sometimes they're wondering, right? I mean, I'm going to order like on my own. It's probably cost me more. Why are we offering me a discount? Yeah, but it's quite common there.
Yes, it is. I think this is something we discussed in our podcast with Freeman, right? About why they want to do this even. But it's interesting. So this TikTok local services, is it across Southeast Asia?
They tried I think they started in Indonesia and Thailand. I know some of the guys were implementing that. So the process is that they will hire agencies with influencers who would like promote certain like restaurants, certain cafes, and the users can buy the vouchers, and the users go and redeem, and afterwards they do the settlement.
But yeah, this makes sense to me because obviously if I'm looking for new places to eat, right, like I wouldn't go to Grab to find places to eat, but whenever I'm scrolling TikTok, like I will see new cafes or new restaurants and I will want to try it.
Because you don't deliberately look for places, right?
Yeah, I don't. It's like
kind of
when
like
I
natural
see
discovery.
it, then I add it to
Yeah.
my maps or something.
Yeah. But after you have bought a voucher, would you actually go to the cafe?
I will. Oh my
You
gosh,
will, okay.
my whole TikTok DMs, right?
Yeah.
It's just me sending cafe and restaurants to my friends, and
Okay.
then ask me like, "Let's go. When shall we go?"
You actually go, okay.
I actually go. So
I think it's more like a Gen Z kind of marketing channel. So I think this is something that maybe platforms are also trying out more to see that the traditional way of like, let's say, engaging audiences are very different now. So TikTok is the way to go. Yeah.
will you not go if you see like a video of a nice cafe on TikTok and then you're like,
Yes, I might buy a voucher and then I forget about it.
oh, you won't
Because
like.
there's too many things to go and too many travels, too many business trips.
Okay, but that's also my problem with TikTok. Like, there's so many cafes, right? Sometimes by the time I want to go to that cafe, I realize it closed down.
Okay, that's
like,
that's not a problem with TikTok.
Then I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the problem of having too many cafes.
Yeah.
But I guess it makes sense for them, and this is something that they did try out in China, right, with Douyin.
Fairly big, right?
Yeah, so I think in China's case, local services is actually doing quite well. It contributes to quite a sizable portion of Douyin's GMV. And I think the most interesting thing about it in China is that Douyin itself, number one, it's firstly competing with the big e-commerce giants. At the same time, they're also encroaching into the space of the food delivery giants. So the rise of Douyin in China, so now not only are they selling vouchers, a lot of live streaming is also gone into helping to promote these restaurants while they're selling these vouchers.
They're also working with food delivery players. They're working with
Ele.me, yes.
by Alibaba to actually deliver, because I think about the vouchers, right? I mean, there will be people like me who forget to redeem the vouchers, but when you have that delivered, you don't have that problem, right? You click, someone will deliver to you, and the whole loop will be closed.
So I think that has made Douyin a very, very formidable competitor for Meituan. And I guess if you guys want to find out more about that topic, we actually have a very extensive coverage in our past podcast. I think Sabrina will link it in the show notes below as well.
And also you can find that in the report itself, there's a fairly extensive global benchmark where we look at the trends in food delivery across the world.
It's interesting. So you can kind of just watch like a live stream of someone eating at a restaurant on Douyin, and then you place an order for food delivery. That's so dangerous. And the food delivery fee in China is like 50 cents. I was like, you know what gives me self-control in Singapore? The delivery fees.
Okay.
Can you imagine if you are just watching? And you know, sometimes at night, like, I don't know, I think you do the same as me. We will watch like people cooking or people eating on TikTok. And then it makes you even hungrier. And then you feel like, oh, I want to order food delivery. But like,
Self-control comes with age.
I think this has ruined my self-control. No, the Grab's $9 delivery fee is very good self-control for me. Because I look at it and I'm like, no.
That's not a Grab problem. That's a market problem.
Yeah,
right? You
it's
just don't have enough riders because you need to hire the locals, right?
Yeah, because it's obviously in Singapore so different. So when I travel, my self-control goes down. Like if I'm in Thailand or Vietnam and I'm hungry at night, I don't even hesitate. I don't even think about it. I'm just like, of course order Grab. What do you mean? It's kind of like when I was in Taiwan with my friends, right? If we want to go anywhere, we're just like, just call Uber lah. Why do we need to think about this? This is what we discussed with Kai Fei in the interview as well, right? About kind of a new value proposition for brands, laziness, consumers' laziness. Yeah. But TikTok doesn't do food delivery.
TikTok doesn't do that. There were rumors that they might acquire a fleet of delivery player in China last year, but somehow it didn't happen. So I would think that even in Southeast Asia, they will probably not do that because there's a whole lot of management they do. Yeah, it's not their forte.
But I guess they can work with someone else because I would say the difference between TikTok and these other platforms is that TikTok has the traffic already. Yes. They don't have to acquire traffic they don't have to do the work that these platforms are doing in terms of increasing the frequency of which people use the app because I think people are already very frequent.
Yes, of course. That's why we're asking this question, right? I think local service was friend or foe, right? Because on one hand, you can work together. You have, you have somebody who can do the traffic acquisition. You have somebody who can do the actual operations of fulfillment. The question is that, if by doing this you become, the other party becomes big, would you be scared, right? That they might, have more incentives to encroach into your space. So we saw that happening with e-commerce, right? Initially, Shopee and JNT Express, they grew like in tantrum, very good partners.
Yes.
but then when Shopee became big, they said, okay, I want to do it myself.
I guess, that's the risk, right? When your partner becomes big enough, they can just decide that, okay, I want to do it myself. But I guess they're still kind of testing the markets. They're not even in all the Southeast Asian markets yet.
Not yet.
They're just in Thailand and Indonesia.
I think I saw some of the ads in Singapore actually selling vouchers. So I think I think it was Yolene saying that. So she saw some KOLs promoting like spa vouchers.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe you are not the target for spa vouchers yet.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and scroll on TikTok.
Who exercises a lot, she doesn't need to go to spa.
If you exercise a lot, you should go to a massage. Yeah. I was like, now I'm thinking, I would use it more for food. Yeah. Because TikTok is kind of like the Gen Z way of finding things to do. Actually, no. Even for like exhibitions in Singapore and all, I haven't seen any vouchers so far on TikTok. Maybe I should go and scroll more. Okay, I'm going to go and do my research. Yeah, so obviously TikTok is the global one, right?
Yep.
And then in China, it is Douyin and Meituan. If you guys are interested, we do have quite extensive coverage of that in our report. Speaking of Meituan,
I think in the global benchmark part, we talked about Meituan's expansion in Saudi Arabia, and we talked about a lot of like consolidation happening globally. And I think a few days after this report went out, Process acquired Just Eat Takeaway in Europe. So there are dynamics happening. And specific about Meituan in Saudi Arabia, I think we talked about that.
We've talked about it in a past podcast. I will link it down in the show notes below. I think we talked a little bit more about essentially Meituan's overseas expansion with Kita into Hong Kong and Saudi Arabia.
So I think you can see on this was taken so 17th February. Yeah. So I think by now, yesterday I was looking at it, and they're already in all the top 9 cities in Saudi Arabia. And you might have heard that they're delivering for KFC and some large merchants using drones in Dubai, and they've got a license to do that. Yes, it's very suitable in Dubai. Yeah.
Drone delivery.
It's too hot to deliver outside.
Yeah.
You actually don't really care because it's not the locals doing that. But of course, drone will be obviously faster, right? You don't have to navigate the traffic and go around and stuff. So of course, the question is that how are they doing in Saudi Arabia, or how do they think they are doing in Saudi Arabia, and would that lead to further expansion? So I've been talking to some people, and there are other Chinese players. I will not name which one, but they're looking at Meituan in Saudi Arabia and say, hey, maybe we should do something in the Middle East as well. So there are lots of active discussions going on. But specifically about Kita, some of the key executives shared a poster on their WeChat. So basically it's a recruitment ad. So you will be working with like people from more than 30 countries and exploring international food and quick commerce services to help everyone eat better, live better. And the specifics, they're hiring country managers, city managers, head of government relations, head of marketing for countries, etc., etc. So the fact they're saying that, okay, we're hiring country managers means at least they have some plans to go to other markets.
I think they're planning a bigger expansion in the Middle East. But so there were previously also rumors about Meituan maybe entering Southeast Asia, right? And I guess those rumors have kind of not.
I would think that, I mean, the discussions between them and the Foodpanda for potential acquisition was real, and the assessment that, okay, Southeast Asia will not be their first step is probably real as well. So knowing this company, they make a lot of database decisions, and Saudi Arabia is probably a much easier market for them to enter, right? I mean, we talked a lot about it in the previous podcast as compared to Southeast Asia, and there are other markets in the Middle East which they can still enter. I mean, for a company to go global from China, they face a challenge that they don't have enough people who have global experience, so they can't like roll out that quickly. Yeah.
It's interesting. I wonder, like, do you ever think about this from a consumer perspective? Do you even notice, like, whenever there are new apps or like when there's like a new food delivery app, or do you feel concerned if you hear that like if Foodpanda is gonna be acquired or if Foodpanda will exit? Because I feel as a consumer, for me at least, I only use 1 or 2 apps.
Yeah, you need a determined player, right? I mean, when Meituan went into Hong Kong, when they went to Saudi Arabia, they are very aggressive in incentives. And I think the rationale is that, okay, if they can't very quickly build a market share that's on par with the leading players, then it will cost them much more. And once they are on par in terms of size, then they can compete on efficiency. So it's not about throwing money. Right? I mean, some people throw money and it's down in the drain. Some people throw money, there's actually some ROI.
But you still have to throw money.
Yes.
So thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Impulso Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, do like and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on the latest happenings and trends in tech, new retail, and the broader digital economy.